We are making Narcissus flowers. Hi, and welcome to my craft room. My name is Kelsey. I also call myself Dinosaur Mama, and today we are making the flower of December, which is the Narcissus. This is the last flower of my Flower of the Month series. 2024 is coming to an end, and I am getting this flower out early in the month. I, again, am sorry for my last flower being out on the last day, but it is what it is, and I have finished this series officially. It is a great feeling. I am looking for comments or suggestions on what I should do next year for each month. I'm thinking either a box or a bow, but I'm not sure. So if you have any ideas, please leave them in the comments. If you are new to my channel, welcome. Thank you so much for crafting with me. You can find the link to my blog down below in the description, and there I will have all of the materials and tools, as well as a written tutorial and the link to the free SVG file. Again, I'm not going to show how to upload this into Cricut Design Space. This is pretty much an upload and go. Just make sure you resize everything if you are going to resize your flower. I cut my flowers where the petals were about 4 inches across, so you can use that as a guide, but really what I did was once I uploaded it into my design space, I just cut as is, but of course play around with your sizes. If you're ready, let's make some flowers. So starting off, I am using my makeup palette. If you have done any of my flowers before, you might have seen this. I just use a cheap eyeshadow palette to add some color on to my different pieces of paper. I am using a non-textured cardstock, and I used a paintbrush today. Usually I use a Q-tip, but I went with a paintbrush. It is a pretty like rough bristled, dense bristled, I guess, paintbrush. That's what it would be called. And I'm just adding some green only around the center. So I'm not coloring the whole thing green. I'm really just adding it to the center of both sides. My only thing that I want to say about using makeup is the dust will get on your fingers. So just be prepared. You don't want to ruin the rest of your flower. So just make sure you wash your hands or, wipe them off, whatever. But that's the only thing we're coloring on our center. So it's pretty easy to do. I'm just dusting off the extra eyeshadow. I'm blowing it off. So it looks kind of like a pencil shaving, and that's what you want. That's the vibe we're going for. Now I'm going to add just a little bit of craft glue on one side of this semicircle, and then I'm going to round this and make it into a cone that doesn't have a point. So you want it to be flared at one side. And I'm going to hold that until it is dry. Now you may want to go in and try to flare this out a little bit with your fingers, or you can leave it stiff as it is, but you can definitely flare it out just a little bit. The next thing that I'm doing is just adding some detail to my flower petals. This is optional. You can use the tip of your scoring stylus from your Cricut machine. You can use your fingernail. You can kind of bend it a little bit, but you don't want to bend it too much. I'm just using the pointed end of my bone tool. So you can use like a popsicle stick, just really anything to give it kind of a groove. Now I did stack my 2 petals, but it did not go through. So I ended up doing this individually on both petals. So just keep that in mind. If you do stack them up, it might not go through all the way, but I'm just adding in some lines just to give those petals a little bit of detail. And now I'm going to start shaping my petals, and I'm using my bone tool again, and they are stacked. You can stack this and do it. And I'm using my thumb to kind of give it a little divot in the center of the petal, but then using my bone tool to curve out just the sides of it going down. And then I kind of give a little pinch on the end just to give it a little more shape. And that is it for shaping your petals. And this flower is pretty simple because it's only 6 petals. So you don't have to worry about shaping a million petals like we did with the chrysanthemum. This one goes by a little bit faster. So I am shaping these, and you're going to do all of the petals the same way. So I'm just curving those ends just a little bit and then kind of giving that divot in the center. So you'll do that for all 3 of those, or 6 of those. So our next step is to just poke a hole in the center, and this is to add on to our floral wire. So I am poking my hole in, and I'm just using my Caesar weeding tool. This one's really sharp, but it's a good tool. Obviously, if it's sharp, it's good. And I'm poking a hole in, and it's a decent sized hole, and this will depend on your floral wire, how thick it is. I learned a few months ago that the lower the number is, the thicker the floral wire is. So I think I'm using something like an 18 gauge. It's a decent size. And I'm poking a hole in both flower petal layers as well as the calyx layer. And this is optional. If you don't want to put it onto a floral wire, you can just glue the layers together if you're putting it on a card or something like that, or a like a cake topper. So this is my center, and I am going to put a little bit of hot glue right on to my floral wire. And if you're doing this where it's flat, this might be a little bit more difficult to glue down, but it is doable. You would just roll it up. So I'm going to roll this around my floral wire. Again, I put some hot glue on it, and then I just started wrapping around. It's pretty small, so it's not like you have to wrap up like a whole rolled paper flower. And then at the end is grab my craft glue again to seal it shut. So the center's pretty easy to put together. I tried a couple different centers before I landed on this one. This was just like the easiest one to accomplish because it's so small. This is a small flower, a lot of tiny details. And so this is going to be your center, and once that dries, we can start assembling our flower. So the first thing to do is slide on that center cone that we had. You can do this after, it does fit on over, but I just feel like it's easier to slide it on before. And then you're gonna slide on your first layer of petals. Obviously, it does not matter which one is the top or the bottom. They are exactly the same. And then we are going to add a little bit of hot glue right to the center and just slide it up until it hits that center that we just curled around, the yellow. So the yellow is gonna be kind of like your stopper, and you just wanna make sure that that's glued on there nice and tight. Now, you can hot glue the cone to the flower. Just be careful with how much hot glue you use. You don't want it to seep out everywhere. I'm adding some hot glue to the bottom of the first layer of petals, and now I'm going to slide on my second layer of petals. Just make sure that these go in between the space of the first layer, so that all 6 petals are seen. You don't want to like layer them on top of each other. They are supposed to be equally distant in between when it comes to the petals. So you're just going to glue those to each other. It's pretty easy. And this flower is pretty easy to put together and assemble. It's one of the shorter assemblies that I had actually all year. Now to glue my center on, I just went around with my Barely Arts glue to kind of like create, if you're quilling, like a very, very thin line. And then I just held this on until it dried. Now I should have definitely flared out my center prior to doing this. So just be careful if you didn't flare it out, like I mentioned earlier on in the video, that it might be just a little bit more difficult to do. So make sure that you flare it out earlier if that's the look you're going for. So, all right, we're gonna let this dry and then we can finish building our flower. All right, and now we can slide on our calyx. And again, just like before when we did the second layer of petals, we're gonna add a little bit of hot glue up towards the top. And I just pinched my calyx a little bit for shaping, nothing crazy. You can also just leave it flat if you want to. And again, you can skip this if you don't want to build this whole part of the flower. And I'm just going to slide that right on up to the base. Now we can add on our leaves. So you can just use a little bit of hot glue on that strip at the bottom. And I used my fingers to just kind of curve this. I didn't bend it completely and give it a nice big fold. I just gave it a little curve so it had some shape. And then I'm using my hot glue on the strip at the bottom. I'm just doing the whole thing in hot glue. And you can attach this and then wrap that strip around your floral wire. Just be careful while you're doing this to not burn yourself, and try your best not to rip the leaf as you wrap it around. So be careful doing that. And then what I did was I went back around it and I wrapped this bottom piece with just a little bit of floral tape. Now, if you've been watching me since the beginning of my paper flowers of the month, floral tape was my enemy. I hated it. I still don't love it, but I've gotten much better at using it. And so it gets like tacky as you use it. So I'm just wrapping it tightly and not that much of it to wrap around the base and then attach it onto the floral wire. This is optional. You definitely don't have to do this. You know, everything is optional, I guess, right? And so I'm adding this on, and then you can do the same thing to the other leaf, or you can just leave one leaf on the flower. Either way, it looks nice. And once you have that wrapped on, you are all done with your Narcissus. Thank you so much for joining me as we made our Narcissus. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to give this a thumbs up. It helps me so much. Subscribe to my channel for new crafting videos every week, and share this with one of your friends who wants to make all 12 flowers of the year. I am so grateful for everyone who showed up to every month. It means the world to me, and I'm excited to see what next year we will come up with. I will see you soon in my craft room, and stay crafty.